I've been thinking for a few minutes. I just cannot think of anything funny to do for the intro for this review. The show is just damn good. I'm excited. What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Stranger Things Season 4, Episode 1, The Hellfire Club. So it does say a lot that the fourth season of a show has probably the most references that I just see as far as merch and everything. When I think about Eddie, when I think about the Hellfire Club, when I think about Vecna, it seems like this is the season that gets referenced the most, just in the public domain. So it does get me excited to see what the season has in store, and from this first episode, I'm already pretty excited. There's already so much about this first episode that feels much more exciting and engaging than the first episode was of season 2 and 3. Because while there is still a lot of setup in this episode when it comes to the characters, I do feel like the story is progressing more smoothly. Because it did feel in the last two seasons, it was more so just letting us know where all the characters are. But in this one, it does feel like there's actual progression happening with these characters, not just a, hey, here's where they are now. When you look at the D&D game, when you look at the basketball game, there are moments happening that are pushing the story forward. So I feel like that's part of it, but also we do get to see the threat a lot more heavily focused in this first episode. And it does feel a lot more connected to our main characters, where in season 2, I don't think we saw the main threat at all. There was just like a little hint because I think they were talking about the crops dying. And I think we saw Dustin maybe getting Dart at some point. And in season 3, it was just Billy that was encountering the Mind Flayer, but none of our main characters were really connected to him at that point. Even Max. In this one, Eddie sees directly the cause of what Vecna is doing, and obviously he has a close connection with Mike and Dustin. So I think because of that, that already sets up a lot better than the last two seasons did. And it gets me a lot more invested too to see what is Vecna. And the only reason I know that this thing is called Vecna is because, again, I've seen merch, seen little figures of Vecna. If I had to take a guess, I would assume that it's connected or is the Mind Flayer from last season, because just like the first three seasons, they're going to base it off of the fact that Vecna was in the D&D game that they were playing. And at one point, they do talk about how they thought they had killed Vecna in the game, but then he came back, so they had to kill him again. So that's what I'm assuming is happening here, is they thought they killed the Mind Flayer last season, but then it's coming back, so they're going to give it the name Vecna, if I had to take a guess. So yeah, that main story has definitely got me interested to see what its deal is. Also, kind of want to learn a little bit more about Chrissy. I know she's gone now, but her story seemed very interesting. From what little bit I could gather, it seemed like her mom may have killed her dad by sewing his eyes and mouth shut. Or maybe didn't kill him, maybe just that's what she did to him. I don't understand why there are spiders crawling everywhere, but just from the little glimpses that we saw with her mom at the sewing machine and her dad sitting in the chair, that's kind of what I picked up on. I don't know if any of that's true, but it seems like it caused her a lot of trauma. And we do know that the Mind Flayer last season was using Eddie's pain to control him, like everything that happened with his dad. So it does sort of make sense that if Vecna is going to be the Mind Flayer just in a different form now or something along those lines, it would make sense that he would target somebody's pain, and Christy seemed to have a lot of it. Also seemed like she might have been pregnant with the guy who was the head of the basketball team. Might have been his kid. So there's a lot about Chrissy that I'm surprised they killed her off, because they were building up a lot with her. But I do feel bad for her in all of this, because it seems like she was dealing with a lot of shit going on. But of course, for Eddie, this isn't going to look good because he invited her into his house. Max saw that. And so I think the assumption is going to be that he did something to her, especially since he's seen as the freak of the school. And since it's the girlfriend of the head of the basketball team, who obviously doesn't like Eddie, there's going to be a lot of assumptions drawn there, I'm sure. So that all is very interesting. The side stories involved are not as interesting, but still fun enough. Steve and Robin, once again, very fun to watch the two of them interact. I loved the point whenever they had, I think it's Tammy Thompson was the girl's name, that they were talking about being a Muppet singer last year. And sure enough, she comes out and she sounds terrible. So that was a really funny scene. Nancy and Jonathan, I'm not really sure about still, because in this episode, we do finally see them talking about things that they do like about each other, which I think is good. Because as I said, I've not really seen what makes them a good couple. So you could argue that is what does, is we see all the stuff that they do like about each other. However, this also comes as they are apparently both avoiding going to see each other for some reason. It kind of feels like both of them are waiting for the other one to take the first step and decide to go visit the other during spring break. But neither of them are making that decision, but they're both just like, it's fine, it's whatever. So I don't know, it feels like there might be some issues there that I guess we'll explore further. On top of that, we see the different stories of the kids. I think they're all pretty realistic. You know, we see Elle getting bullied at her new school, which does feel real, considering she is a little weird and high school kids are assholes. You see Dustin and Mike are really into D&D, but then Lucas wants to play basketball, and so there's a bit of a drift apart in this episode, which happens in high school. I did like the simultaneous, though, of Lucas and Erica both having their victories. It did really work, and it built up that scene really well. The music on top of it, too, was brilliant. And then we see Max dealing with the aftermath of everything that happened with Billy last season, and it's very real. The mom and dad splitting up. See, the mom is a drunk now. She's basically having to take care of everything at the house. Feels like she's sort of staying away from everybody else. Headphones on all the time, seemingly very depressed. So like I said, the kids' stories do feel very realistic. The only other thing to talk about is we do see Joyce gets a Russian doll that she breaks open and finds a message inside. It's kind of all that really happened there. Wasn't too interesting because, again, I already knew that Hop was still alive. But hey, at least they're not spending the whole season on this story. Seems like they're kind of jumping right into it with her getting the letter right away and learning this information. I think that's about it for this episode. The only thing that I did want to point out that was just objectively bad, and it's just one scene, one line, but I don't know why, it just kind of irked me a little bit. Maybe I'm the only one that thought this was dumb, but it's at the basketball game. You got Nancy and the one kid with the glasses watching the game. He wants to write a headline, something like the Tigers get devoured or something like that, so he wants the other school to win. But what was dumb about it is the head of the basketball team, he goes down, he scores 2 points, and then the other school comes down, hits a three-pointer, and now it's 3-2. 2 baskets. And the kid looks at Nancy and goes, oh, looks like my headline has a good chance. It's 2 baskets. It's the first 2 plays of the game. What are you talking about? That could be the only basket they hit all night. And he's already talking as if, oh yeah, clearly I was right. It was just so dumb. And maybe it's based on the fact that I've heard other commentators make similar stupid statements after like 5 minutes of a game, whenever it's a 90-minute match. So maybe it's more of a pet peeve, but I just thought it was a really stupid line to throw in there. I feel like it would have made more sense if you had him say that at the end of the match, whenever the other team's up by 2 or 3. But I mean, it's just one line. It doesn't take down the episode or anything. It was just a really dumb line to me. But we move on. Like I said, I'm excited to be in season 4, so on to the next episode. I'll see you there. And now episode 2, Vecna's Curse. So it was a little off. They didn't call it Vecna because it was something returning. It's because it's a spellcaster, which is kind of interesting to think about the fact that we're now getting another monster from this other world. We didn't really learn much about the Mind Flayer, to be honest. We didn't learn why it was doing what it was doing, why it wanted to basically take over everybody and kill all humans. There seems to be a lot of mystery still about this other world that I do hope we get some answers about, maybe in this season. Because the creatures so far have seemed to be pretty animalistic, but Vecna is the first one that seems a little bit more human-like. So I don't know if he's been sort of behind everything, like the ruler of this other world, maybe? I don't know, there's just a lot of interesting questions being raised right now that kind of interested to dig more into. One thing that has worked really well so far this season is they've built the stakes very quickly by killing off 2, not necessarily main characters, but side characters that are connected to the main cast. I know Eddie is not technically a main character, but I do feel like he's already got this connection, and mostly because I know how much he's been talked about, I feel like they are building him up as a bit of a main character this season. You got him dealing with Chrissy's death, and now you've got Fred, who was very close with Nancy. They worked together trying to get information, and now he's gone. It really sets up right away how dangerous this threat is, and also the fact that there's no way to stop it physically. It seems to attack you mentally. That does add an extra element of danger where, like we saw with Eddie and Chrissy in the first episode, he was trying to get her attention, trying to snap her out of this curse that Vecna cast on her, and it wasn't working. And he still managed to kill her anyway. So it kind of feels like if Vecna does get his hands, claws in your mind, it doesn't feel like it's an easy thing to stop him. And since we do know a couple of our characters are dealing with some past trauma, we saw with Chrissy, it seemed to use her trauma against her to trap her in her own mind. Same thing with Fred. Seems he might have been responsible for this accident and then ran away instead of helping whoever died there. So it does make me wonder, because of the group, Max has obviously been very heavily affected by Billy. It does make me wonder if at some point she's going to become a target for Vecna. And so it does raise those stakes, because now she could possibly be in danger. They haven't mentioned it outwardly yet, but you can piece together the clues that Max is probably going to be in danger at some point. So if I'm wrong and Max is never in any danger, then I feel like that's going to be a missed opportunity. But I'm right. I really think they cleverly set it up here to where you can start to feel that urgency, the danger early on because of these early kills. But that's just the main story. The rest of the stuff, pretty interesting. Probably the least interesting is Nancy and Jonathan. Apparently he lied to her about what college he's going to. I just still don't really care about this story, to be honest. I don't dislike either Nancy or Jonathan. I feel like I'm much more interested in Nancy whenever she's trying to search after a story. I would almost call it a Lois Lane. I know Nancy Drew was technically her nickname last season by those assholes, but I do feel like it's more of a Lois Lane, like a reporter that doesn't give up and wants to get to the bottom of a story whenever she's got her teeth sunk into it. But Jonathan right now, I mean, there's just nothing for him. His whole story is about Nancy. So that's not as interesting. And the stuff with Elle getting bullied by this girl, I'm also not as interested in it. It's done well. I do understand that this happens. And her reaction is something that has been building, I think, for a while, because they showed in the first episode she has this penchant for violence, and it showed itself here. Which honestly, the girl was kind of asking for it. But I will say that story is not as interesting as what's going on with the main story at the moment. So it just sort of feels like all of these scenes are showing how bad things are in California. I almost kind of wonder if this is going to be part of why she decides to maybe go back to Hawkins. Because I'm assuming at some point they all will. The Byers, Elle, Mike, they'll all go back to Hawkins together because we got to get the gang back together, right? To stop this new threat. But even with Mike and Will, it kind of feels like this typical high school drama where, similar to what we saw with Lucas and Mike and Dustin, they're just sort of drifting apart as friends. And that happens in high school. And it's not done poorly. It's just stuff that I'm not as interested in. So any of their scenes when they're at the roller rink, they were fine. I just was kind of biding my time waiting to get back to the rest of the story, because that's more so where my personal interest lies at the moment. But something that has recaptured my interest is Joyce and Hopper. We do see she gets in contact with a prison guard, basically extorting her for money so he can get Hopper out of the prison. We get to see some of those scenes with Hopper at the prison getting tortured for information. And it's nice to see Hopper be a badass again. We didn't get much of that in season 3, so it was a nice return to form for him there. I will say it is a little weird that the device blows up, it completely evaporates all the scientists in the room, and yet Hopper just jumps down a level and he survives. I'm going to assume, because they don't say this, but I'm going to assume the logic in the show is that when it blew up, all of the energy got blown back toward the scientist and away from Hopper, and that's why he survived. I personally feel like it would have made more sense if he got somehow teleported, like through the upside down or something. But hey, whatever. I can suspend my disbelief a little bit. It's fun to see Dustin and Max team up with Steve and Robin in this episode. The camaraderie is still there between the four of them. I feel like them bouncing off of each other is probably my most favorite part about this episode. I didn't talk much about Eddie in the last episode, but he had this kind of fun, vibrant personality that made me understand very quickly why a lot of people, I think, like him as a character. But I'm more interested to see now where his character is going to go after he learns about all of this stuff. After he learns a lot of the stuff that he thought was just a fantasy is actually real. I'm very excited to see him, especially interacting as well with the rest of this group, because he's got a very different personality, I think, from the rest of the kids. So I think that sets up for what should be a fun dynamic with this group of 5 looking into what happened to Chrissy. I wouldn't be surprised if Nancy gets involved with this group very quickly too. So there's just a lot of good build-up here that I think is done much better than the first episode of the last 2 seasons. I think it's got my interest a lot quicker. The characters for me are moving in more interesting directions. They've also added some more interesting characters. Hell, even the cops in this one, they were just goofballs a couple seasons ago, the ones that were working for Hopper. We actually do see them kind of being a bit more competent at their jobs right now, or at least competent when it comes to questioning. I'm sure there's stuff, because the head of the basketball team, his name is not sticking in my brain for some reason, but he even calls them out that they don't really do much. But just in that interrogation scene, they came off a little bit more competent than we've seen them before. So I'm kind of hoping that means that the goofiness of season 3 has maybe died down a bit, and we'll start to get not more seriousness, because I do think the charm of this show is the mixture of the two. You do have those funny moments mixed in, but I think you got to keep it grounded like the first 2 seasons were to really capture that good balance, whereas season 3 kind of threw away a lot of the seriousness of it. When you think about Hopper and Joyce and how goofy they were acting, you think about Steve and Robin, as funny as that their whole interaction with the Russians were, the fact that they were able to just sneak into this Russian base. We even see in this one, when they're questioning Hopper, they have a picture of Joyce on camera. So if they had cameras in the base, how were Dustin, Steve, Erica, and Robin able to just walk around unnoticed? So it did feel like we were really supposed to suspend our disbelief last season. Whereas the first 2 seasons, obviously it's a show, there's a lot of fantasy elements to it that are not real and you have to suspend your disbelief for. But there was still this element of realism in it that I think allowed us to take it more seriously. I think they lost that in season 3. So hopefully season 4 brings it back. So far, I think they have. I do think I'm a lot more bought into this story right now than I was at this point last season. I think that about does it for this episode. So that'll do it for me. Cue the outro. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching that review. I hope you enjoyed it. First and foremost, please leave your thoughts in the comments down below. I love having discussions with people, so whatever your thoughts were, whether you agree or disagree with me, please leave them down below. Obviously, no spoilers. Also, if you did find yourself enjoying this review and you want to see more, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me out. I also have a gaming channel as well as a channel where I talk about soccer, so if you want to give those a follow as well, that would be much appreciated. And lastly, if you want to help me improve upon the quality of these channels, I do have a Patreon. All of this is in the description below. With all that being said, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will talk to y'all later. Peace out.